Hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can see my screen and the slides. We will just give it another minute for some other people to join and we will get things started. Okay, I think in the interest of time, we will get things moving along. So welcome everyone. It's great to have you here and hopefully you're in the right place. Today we will be talking about how to craft a standout resume and cover letter and really make an impact. But before we kick things off, really would love and encourage you to get social. Please feel free to tag Academy XI on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and share any takeaways from today's session. And also, if you aren't following us or part of our community already, encourage you to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all at Academy XI to hear more about upcoming promotions we have, any updates, news, exciting information, find out about what's happening at Academy XI. So as I say, really encourage you to jump online and follow us if you aren't already doing so. Okay, without further ado, today's agenda is quite packed, but my aim is to equip you all with some really valuable insights and strategies to enhance your cover letters and resumes, and therefore increase your chances of securing interviews, hopefully. So we're going to cover off a few things. I've got them highlighted on the screen there. So first up, we're going to talk about cover letters and why cover letters matter. We'll be exploring, the significance of cover letters in influencing hiring decisions and how they can complement your resume. Remember, a cover letter serves as your introduction to potential employers. So really highlighting your qualifications, your experiences, and your suitability for the role. We'll be looking at how to actually craft an effective cover letter. So I'll introduce to you a 6-part framework that's going to guide you through writing some standout cover letters. And this framework should help you structure your cover letter effectively and ensure that you're addressing key aspects that are going to resonate with employers. We'll then be looking at how to really optimize your resume. So discussing some strategies to emphasize your skills and experiences in your resume. And I'll be sharing some tips on how to craft achievement-based job summaries that will grab the attention of employers. And then we'll also be looking at just some common mistakes at the end very quickly, which might seem quite obvious and simple, but just things that I think, you should really consider these pitfalls to avoid when you're writing those cover letters and those resumes. So as I say, quite a lot to get through today. So I will crack right on to the first part, which is why you need a cover letter and how that really impacts your chances of securing an interview. And wanted to share this with you because why do you need a cover letter? It's a question that I get asked a lot, and I think it's something that you often see kind of people talking about online. But some really interesting stats from Resume Lab. So they actually did a survey of a lot of kind of HR professionals, recruiters, hiring managers, and I wanted to share these stats with you. So Interestingly enough, 83% of hiring managers say that cover letters are important when they're making their hiring decision. And then on top of that, a further 83% of them claim that they would interview a candidate that's got a great cover letter, even if their resume isn't up to par. So two really interesting things there already to bear in mind. 74% of recruitment decision makers prefer to receive job applications which include a cover letter, apart from resumes. So once again, a pretty high number there, just showing that cover letters are relevant and they are important. Even if submitting a cover letter is optional. So, sometimes you might see a job application, they're not specifically saying that they want a cover letter as well as the resume. 77% of those recruiters that were surveyed said that they would give preference to candidates who did send a cover letter as well, even though it wasn't asked for. And 72% of recruiters still expect a cover letter, even if it states that they're optional. So a few scenarios there to think of. You'll see a job advert, it explicitly asks for both a resume and a cover letter. Of course, send both. If they are saying it's optional, you should still send both. And then even if they don't ask for it at all, that 77% of recruiters are saying that they would give preference to an applicant who has included one. So some food for thought there, and I think some really powerful stats to share with you. Moving on. So why is a cover letter important? And this same group of recruiters was surveyed, and there's a few pretty impactful reasons here as to why it is deemed as important. So firstly, 63% of those respondents said they want to see why you are motivated to join the company. Like, explain why you're applying. Why do you want to join them? So 63% of recruiters said they wanted to see that. On top of that, 50% see value in a cover letter being a chance to describe your career objectives. Now, your resume necessarily doesn't kind of provide the space to do that. So this is really an opportunity for you to share some insight around your objectives in terms of your career goals, and kind of add some narrative to your application. Also, 50% said that they want to know, why you're changing careers. So, in the majority of cases, obviously, with those of you at Academy XI, you are changing careers. There is a transition there. Don't leave that out. They want to know, why have you moved from, this career and now into this career? Once again, narrative, story, they want to understand. If you're not explaining that, they'll fill in the blanks, right? They'll come to their own conclusion. So, you're in charge of that narrative. So the cover letter's a chance to kind of, talk through that and explain that to them. Also, if you've got employment gaps, a cover letter is a great place to do that as well. And 49% of respondents in this survey said that cover letters are the perfect place to do that. So, you might have taken out a couple of years to study. You might have taken time out to travel the world. You might have taken time out because you're starting a family. If there are those gaps in your resume, a cover letter is a really good opportunity and place to do that. And then the last thing that we've got there is highlighting professional achievements. And 47% of respondents said that they would love to see that in a cover letter as well. So, anything that you've done in your career, like maybe won an award, or, been the highest performing salesperson for 2 years in a row, anything like that, anything that's an achievement, call it out, because once again, it's really going to kind of I guess strengthen your application as a standout candidate. So some really interesting facts there from the words of or from the mouths of recruiters. So bear those stats in mind. So just in summary, just to recap, why do you need a cover letter? To introduce yourself, because first impressions really do matter. You want it to make a good impression to whoever's reviewing your application. It's also a great way to just highlight your written communication skills. A well-written cover letter, does something, beyond just talking about yourself. It also shows those skills, those communication skills, and also it's a great way to just create that connection between your experiences, your skills, your qualifications, and the position itself, and kind of highlight you as an individual, and kind of a chance for you to, as I said, apply your narrative to the role that you're applying for. So yeah, remember those four things. Super important. The biggest takeaway, I guess, from all of this is that just think to yourself, a cover letter is not optional. Even if it's not asking for a cover letter, or it's saying it's optional, do it, because it's just going to strengthen your application. Okay, let's move on. This is the part that's going to be really useful for you. So now we know why we need cover letters to accompany our application. But here are some tips to craft that really standout cover letter and kind of, I guess, cover all the bases, and make sure that you're addressing everything that you need to address with your application. So I'm going to talk about this framework that's pretty easy to apply. And I would say, with cover letters, don't have a kind of copy and paste template, because it's pretty easy to spot when you've done that. But the trick is really to have a formula to it, because if you adhere to this kind of framework or this formula, it's easy to then tailor it a bit more rather than just this kind of generic cover letter. But it also means, following this framework, you're not starting every cover letter from scratch. With a blank page, so you know what structure to follow. And I'm going to talk through each of these 6 points. So, step 1, we need an impactful opening. Step 2, you should be talking about your experience. And then 3, your skills. Step 4, any achievements that you want to call out. 5, super important, why you're applying to this role and to this company. And then 6, making sure that you've got a really strong closing to the cover letter as well. So let's dive in. So why are these kind of cover letters, why is it so essential, and how can it impact your job search? And firstly, crafting your cover letter, starting with an impactful opening is so important. Begin with a professional greeting that's tailored to the company culture. So, if you know that it's a more corporate and kind of traditional type of organization, use Dear Mr., Ms., Mrs., and their last name. For a more relaxed culture, opt for Dear and their first name. And, if you can't find the hiring manager's name, try looking online, or the recruiter's name. You can find this information on LinkedIn, a Google search, or even just contacting the company directly. I really stress, the kind of generic, to whom it may concern, or dear hiring manager. If you really can't find their name at all, go with that, I would say, as your last resort. But having something that's personally addressed to whoever is responsible for hiring the role, is a great touch, and it also shows that you've done your research and your due diligence. So try as hard as you can to find out who to address it to, and there's no harm asking directly. Don't worry about that. Your opening paragraph really is crucial. So it's about showing that you've done your research on the company, and I would personalize it for each organization, just to avoid sounding generic. Make sure that you are you're calling out the role you're applying for, you're stating the name of the company that you're applying for. When I used to be in recruitment, internal recruitment, with cover letters, if we received them and they didn't mention the role and the company, at all anywhere in their cover letter, then we probably weren't going to bring them in to apply, because they've not taken the time, sorry, into interview, because they've not taken the time to even say what they're applying for and where they're applying for it, and saying why they want to work for us. So make sure you kind of call out straight away, what it is you're applying for, within their organization. Also, with the introduction, and this kind of impactful opening, you can sometimes use a bit of humor, now obviously within good taste, but I think being a bit quirky, or doing something that stands out a bit and sets you apart from the crowd, can work. It does depend on the company culture, though. If it aligns with their tone as an organization, you can gather that from reading the job advert, and having a look into the company's culture, and finding out if they're that would suit. And job ads, you'll see the difference in job ads as you're going through, things like Seek, sites like Seek, and the LinkedIn job board, because some of those job ads are quite fun to read, and sound pretty cool, and some of the more traditional corporate ones, maybe in banks, for example, are a lot more formal. So use your judgment there, and obviously if you feel comfortable with it. But anything that makes you stand out, and capture and grab someone's attention at the start of a letter is a good idea, if you can do that. Okay, so that's making an impactful opening. After you've hooked the reader, essentially, is the time to delve into your experience, and talk a bit about yourself. And really, this is where you need to tailor this section to highlight any relevant industry experience, or any transferable skills, depending on your career stage or your job transition. And so there's an example there, up on the screen, and this one just talks about how in my working career I've demonstrated a history of working in teams that have a high level of customer focus. I've improved business outcomes, and that how now I've transitioned into UX, and worked on client projects. I'm now looking to kind of move into this new role. And also there it says point 3, it's more kind of 2A, I guess, or 2B, is talking a bit about your career transition. So, you can say, where did I come from? My background is, I have 10 years of experience as a graphic designer. And here I was working on projects involving XYZ, and now I'm moving and transitioning my design skills from graphic design, and kind of adding to my skill set as a UX UI designer. So there's kind of 2 ways you can approach your skills and experience there. But this is really where you showcase what you bring to the table, and why your experience is relevant, and you're applying for the role. And it doesn't have to be tons of stuff either. Just 2 or 3 really kind of relevant transferable points that you think are strong points within your experience. That's enough. And especially if it can address anything that they've put in the job ad as well, in terms of skills or experience that they're looking for, matching those things up are really important. Talking of that, skills, and aligning them with those job requirements, like I just said. So any experience you've got, and then any skills that you have that you can kind of connect the dots to in their job ad. Really important to call that out. Once again, 2 or 3 things if you can. Any anecdotes, or anything that can kind of illustrate your proficiency in skills or tools, or experience that you've had, this is the place to do that. Once again, it just adds a bit more color to the facts that you've got listed in your resume. And so, another example there of kind of a paragraph that you could write, talking about the experience that you have in industry X at whichever company, and how you were able to, in this case, develop your interpersonal communication skills as a result of working with different external and internal stakeholders, and that you were able to deliver high quality results for the company, and how that then maybe relates to what you're applying for in this role, which I think here is a product design, a product management position. So kind of once again connecting those dots between what you've done, and what you can do skills wise, and how that applies to the role that you're now applying for. Um, okay, so we've covered off openings, experience, and your career transition, skills, and the next thing is achievements. So, if you have got any achievements, don't shy away from showcasing them. If you've got any notable career accomplishments, share them to demonstrate the capabilities that you have. Explain why you are applying for the role as well, and showcase your understanding of the company's values and their mission, and express genuine interest in contributing to the success of the company. So as we've got there, this example, this person in 2022 was honored to receive the UX Leader of the Year award, and in the company that they were working for at the time, and highlighting that it's relevant, it's something to be proud of, and it's notable, right? So call it out. It's something that you've got that other applicants haven't. So yeah, anything achievement wise that's kind of job related, don't be afraid to call that out. It shows that you can kind of kick some goals essentially. And then the why part that we've got there in section 5, why are you applying? As I said, you need to demonstrate and show that you're interested in that organization. So, the example there, friends and family who've worked within the company, they have heard that the customer focus and the workplace culture is positive and fulfilling, and that you or this person wants to be part of that company, and how those values of that company really resonate with you. It could be anything. You might be, if it's a company and they have a product that you use, say it's like a banking company, a banking organization. Might be CBA, and you been a client of CBA all your life and you love their app, their banking app. Is that a reason why? Like, I've always, it's the best banking app I've ever used, or the best app I've ever used, and I'd love to be a part of a company that creates such amazing technology and is always kind of pushing the limits of what you can do in terms of serving your customers. Anything that shows that you've done a bit of research about the company, the cover letter really is the place to do that. Okay, and then finally, a good closing. Close well, finish that cover letter, finish strong, encourage the reader to take action, whether it's to schedule a call or a meeting, it's saying that you'd love to have the opportunity to talk more with you about the position, how I can, my skills and my experience might be of benefit, be confident there. That also kind of demonstrates, I guess some strength to your application, and that sign off in a professional manner. Kind regards is normally the best way to do it, I would say. That's it. It's as simple as that in the sense. So just kind of remember this framework of have a good impactful opening, talk about your experience, talk about your skills, talk about why you're applying, any achievements, and then end with a strong closing. Okay. Don't worry, I know I'm going very fast, and sorry, just conscious of the amount of content that we've got to get through. But this will be available to you, recording, will be sent out to you afterwards. So you'll be able to kind of go through and pause and kind of take any notes if you need to. So yeah, this framework you'll be able to follow pretty easily from the recording. The final part as well, before I wrap up this section on cover letters, is around formatting. And first impressions really do matter. So yes, we've talked about this framework, but making sure that your cover letter presents well. The font should match your resume. So the style, the size, that kind of thing. Proofread, make sure that you double check, triple check for grammar, for spelling, any errors, anything like that. Attention to detail, right? It's really, really important to call that out. Be short and to the point. If you can say it in less words, use less words. you could maybe even use ChatGPT or something to kind of help make your sentence, if you've got kind of, a really big long sentence or a paragraph, like can you use something to make it more concise and more impactful, and say it using less words, less verbose, and just be consistent, as I said there. So make sure that it's really, really, in line, and kind of is the sister, marries up to your resume. Um, if you're transitioning into a UX UI role, or a dev role, web dev role, anything like that, graphic design, pretty much anything nowadays, I would say, think about accessibility. Make sure that your fonts and your styles, and everything is easily readable, from an accessibility point of view as well. One page. If I haven't said that and you don't know that, cover letter should not be any more than 1 page long. And just, yeah, once it's too much, people are going to be put off from reading it. So really focus on keeping it to 1 page at the very most. Yeah, can't go over this enough, and stress it enough. Proofread, get someone else to look over your cover letter. I know what it's like when I've been working on something and I've been rereading it and rereading it. You kind of get blindness to what you've written, and those kind of mistakes or typos don't necessarily always jump out at you. So get someone else to have a look if you can, and be your second pair of eyes. But overall, following this process should really streamline how you approach writing a cover letter, and make sure that you're addressing what they're looking for in each role, and making sure that you're standing out from the crowd, and also just being consistent with your approach, for all your applications. Okay, tons covered off, tons covered off. I need a sip of water. Okay. The next thing that we're going to discuss, is how to highlight your skills and experience in your resume, and doing this as effectively as possible. Um, Tons of information in this section as well, so I will hopefully not go too fast. But what we're going to talk about first are, as I said, these skills, the skills and experience side of things, and in particular, when I say this, I'm talking more about the kind of soft skills, and how you can highlight those separately to the technical skills or the hard skills, which you can have in a separate skills or key skills tools section for your resume. But it is good to, in your profile or your summary, talk about a few of the soft skills that you've got, especially if the job ad is kind of making reference to some of those more soft skills, in the advert. And it's really crucial to kind of distinguish between those two things. So as I say, beginning with a short profile or about me section, at the top of your resume, that's underneath your contact details and your name, is a really good way to incorporate a few of these skill areas. Keep it concise, like 2 to 4 lines, sentences highlighting who you are, your background, and why you're applying. I think it's super important. It's just like an intro to you. And as I say, this is where you can showcase those soft skills. Really important if you're changing careers as well, because it's going to summarize the unique qualities that you've got, and kind of fill in any gaps for the reader as well. And I think that's super important to as I say, fill in those gaps, fill in the blanks, connect the dots, be really kind of clear with your intent, so they know, why you've transitioned careers. Recruiters, hiring managers, people often read this section first. It's at the top of the page. Make sure that you're being concise, to the point, and that it's kind of tailored to the specific role or the job that you're applying for. And incorporating those soft skills. So examples I've put there, things like adaptability, decision making, empathy, tenacity, communication. They're soft skills. And there's some slightly more tangible ones, like being empathetic and leadership, and being a good communicator. And you can kind of match them together, in your profile section. So some ways of doing this, I've shared here. for example, if they're looking for relationship building and stakeholder management, you could say that you have an exceptional skill at building relationships with all stakeholders, ensuring effective communication, and desirable project outcomes. So you're capturing that there. So you could be saying, I'm I'm a UX designer with 10 years of experience in graphic design. Throughout my career, I have demonstrated exceptional skill at building relationships with all stakeholders, ensuring effective communication. So you're addressing maybe some of those soft skills they're looking for. Likewise, with something like problem solving, maybe you are now a data analyst, and you've previously been working in accounting, maybe, and you might be saying, I'm a data analyst with 15 years of experience in accounting. Problem solving, has always been a key ability of mine, being able to get to the root cause of an issue by listening, understanding the core of the problem, and then implementing a creative solution. So anything like that, as I say, talking about this is who I am, and these are the skills, the soft skills that I've got. That profile section is the perfect place to talk about that and address some of those points in the job ad. And as I say, separate, don't list those soft skills in your key skills, your technical tools, technical skills section, where you might be putting coding languages and software, design software like Figma or Adobe that you're mentioning. That section's for those technical skills. Call out some of those, a couple of those soft skills in your profile. Okay, moving on. Now, we're going to talk about how to craft achievement-based job summaries that are really going to make you shine and stand out. And this is in that job summaries is your work experience section. Can't stress enough the importance of having some bullet points that are achievement based in your work history and your work experience. Your job summaries, those work experience summaries of your previous employers, that goes, as I say, into the career history part, and it gives an overview and an insight of your experience, your capabilities, your achievements. It's not a list of tasks, it's not a list of duties, it's not a job description in itself, but this is really where you should be highlighting your achievements and your capabilities. The general rule of thumb is 4 to 6 points, for the most recent couple of roles, I would say. I said 4 to 5 points for previous roles. I think, depending how far back it is or how relevant the role was, even, 2. If it's a job you were in maybe 10 years ago, or it's something that's not necessarily relevant to the role, but the most recent couple of roles, I definitely say 4 to 6 points, and this is where you should be demonstrating your capability through that use of tangible evidence, and we're going to touch on that. So things like statistics, figures, timeframes, budgets. It's a really powerful way to increase the impact and the meaning of your work experience for the hiring manager or the recruiter. And what I'd also say is, avoid repetition between similar roles, and focus on those achievements rather than the tasks. So if you've worked as a marketing specialist in company A most recently, and prior to that, you were also a marketing specialist in company B for a couple of years, don't repeat the same kind of tasks and separate it and call out different achievements there. You're better off avoiding that repetition. So, as I said, these job summaries, 4 to 6 points per role. You should be identifying what parts of your current role are relevant to the role that you're applying for. So once again, it's that whole idea of connecting the dots, those transferable skills I mentioned already, and any achievements that you can highlight in that summary. And we'll touch on some kind of examples of that shortly. But really think about anything that was a great achievement in your role, or kind of had an impact on the business or your team. Tasks are important, especially if they're relevant to the job that you're applying for, but don't just leave it at the task. If there is a way that you can demonstrate an achievement in that task you were doing in the role, and when you were performing that task, that's how you should talk about it. Also, think about reducing it down as well and being concise with those bullet points. They can often be kind of, your bullet points can be fragmented sentences, which is fine if it makes sense and flows when you read it. Don't get kind of bogged down with extra words and providing content that's just not needed at all. Reduce it, reduce it, reduce it. The space on that resume page is really valuable. So yeah, think about, are you being too wordy? And the other thing there I've mentioned is avoiding jargon, avoiding slang, because even if it is industry relevant, the audience might be a generalist recruiter, right? The person looking at your resume, or you might have used different acronyms in your organization to the organization that you're applying for. So try and stay away from abbreviations or kind of anything like that, because the reader might not know what you're talking about. So if there's a more generic term for it, fine, and it's easily understandable. So for example, if it's a CRM tool, call it a CRM tool that you are using, and maybe not the actual brand name. Anything like that, just be conscious of it, because you want people to truly understand what you've got on the page there. Structuring the point. So structuring a job summary is such an important aspect to consider when you're drafting your resume, and it's not done very well. And understanding how to structure each of those bullet points in these job summaries in your work history, it's really going to kind of help you master how you do that, and improve your resume so much, and keep your reader engaged as well. And having a formula that does that means that it's going to be easy for you to apply, and those points are going to be impactful. And sometimes even in each bullet point, using bold to highlight maybe statistics or key points, make that stand out from the page even more. So we're going to talk about that kind of now. I'm going to kind of talk about how to structure those impactful job summary bullet points. And the first thing is action verbs. Using action verbs, super important. An action verb is something that describes your strengths through demonstrating your capability. So it's going to paint a picture for the hiring manager, for the recruiter, in their minds of you actually doing that. Okay. So using essentially positive words, positive verbs, action verbs with an intent to describe your achievements is really powerful in a job summary. And what it will also do, more importantly, is stop you falling into this idea of like a list of tasks or responsibilities, and falling into that trap. First thing to remember, start with an action verb. Okay. So action verb, then you will say how, what, when, demonstrate what it was that you were doing, and then you'll talk about the outcome. So what was the result of what you were doing in that bullet point. So keep this in mind. We're going to break it down a bit further, but start with the action verb, talk about what you were doing, demonstrate it, and then it's going to end with the outcome of what you were doing. So here are some examples of action verbs. This list is tiny. There are so many that you can use, but we've put some on the page there. Things like processed, converted, improved, delivered, negotiated. They are words that really have an intent. They are, as I say, action words, action verbs. So think about these words that you can start your points off with. The other thing to say is don't repeat them through your resume. Don't start everything off with either, improved and delivered, improved, and try and use as many as possible. Try and avoid that repetition. If you're really stuck, okay, to use them maybe twice, but try not to be too repetitive with these words. So you've got your action verb. And the best part about it is that they can prompt you to use tangible evidence or provide tangible evidence when you've got it available to demonstrate your point. So having tangible evidence is going to mean that you're hopefully going to have measurable results for your outcome of your bullet point. Go back, think about past jobs, your current job. What are those achievements? What are those tasks that you were doing? How can you, demonstrate them with tangible evidence and show an outcome? Look at performance reviews if you've got access to anything like that. If you're aware of things that you've done in previous roles or your current role. If you were set KPIs to meet, for example, or sales targets or anything like that, they're the things that you should be thinking of as kind of achievements to call out. And also that tangible evidence can be used as the outcome as well. And especially that tangible evidence could maybe be something that's quantifiable, that you can demonstrate. So here's a couple of examples. The first one being, led responsive design creation for the landing page, which yielded 50% increase in lead generation and improved conversion rates. So you can see there, we've got the action verb led at the start. You're talking about what you were doing, what the task was, how, why, what. The result, the outcome was that 50% increase, the quantifiable kind of section to it. And then the outcome was that it increased lead generation and improved conversion rates. Okay. The second example there, same kind of thing, decreased the bounce rate by 29% with the redesign of mobile website, which saw an uplift in overall sales. So the outcome there being there was an uplift in sales as a result of you decreasing the bounce rate on the website, on the mobile website. So a couple of simple examples there. Think about how you can relate that to your work experience and your job history. Okay. This information is not essential for every kind of bullet point, job summary point that you've got in there. And it can be difficult to think about it for every role that you've had. But if you've got 4 bullet points, maybe in that job that you're talking about, that role you're talking about, come up with at least 2 bullet points if you can to show those achievements, to quantify them, show the outcome. It's really going to make an impact. So do it as much as possible if you can. If you're really stuck, don't worry about it, but also don't kind of fall into the list of that list trap again of kind of just listing duties and responsibilities. So try and stay away from it. And the reason it's so impactful is because it just provides those measurable insights. It shows what you've done. You're backing up with evidence. It's basically proof as to what you've achieved. And it really gives a perspective on your level of responsibility in that role, and what you're capable of doing as well. So can't stress it enough. These points are what makes a really impactful and powerful resume for the reader. So an example again of sentence structure, just to kind of hit this home to you all. Improve the overall UI of the website by making informed user-focused changes which increase the total engagement of time of visitors to the site by 30%. Okay, so you can see there, it's not just the action verb, the summary point, and the how. We're also talking about the tangible evidence. We're putting tangible evidence into that point. We're talking about the outcome. We're talking about how we did it. We're starting that sentence with the action verb. So just a great way there to kind of think about how to kind of structure your sentence with those 4 points. Okay. Final thoughts on this and things that I'm going to call out. In summary, this is a guide, and it's basically a design, a framework, a format for you to follow to make sure that you avoid that list trap with your bullet points. So, I would say the easiest thing is just always start with an action verb. Think action verb, achievement, quantify, and you'll no doubt that's a great formula to follow. You won't always have the information on hand. I'm aware of that. If it's something that you did a few years ago, you might not remember the exact details and be able to quantify it exactly. But you might have a rough idea. That's probably good enough. Try and kind of where you can go back and remember as much as you can about your roles and any achievements there. If you're still in touch with anyone that's maybe working there, or you still know colleagues that maybe worked on a particular project with you, drop them a line. They might be able to kind of help you remember some of those achievements that you made in the team or in the business. remember that you've got the knowledge and the ability to make informed decisions about what you put in your resume. You are selling yourself. Think about what would, if I was looking at someone's resume, what would resonate with me? How am I going to sell myself the best? How am I going to make the best impression on people? And you can do that, right? It's in your hands. You're the one that's crafting and writing your resume. So really encourage you, think about it. You're the one that gets to put down on the page how you sell yourself, how you come across. And then finally, the last thing is the less words, the better. Be concise, be straight to the point, and kind of, if you can, squeeze in as much as you can and as few words as possible. Really be impactful, less words, hit the point home, make it, really, really easy for people to see on the page and to understand, what those achievements were and in your role. Some great takeaways there, I think. And once again, you'll be able to review this in the recording. But as I say, achievements based, action verbs, quantifiable. You're winning. You're winning. Okay, and then to kind of wrap up here, just some really simple things to remember, some common mistakes that people make when they're writing cover letters and when they're writing resumes, that you can avoid. There are some pitfalls that people make time and time again, and they might seem simple and seem obvious, but can't stress enough, like double check, be aware of these things. Not tailoring your cover letter and resume. Can't stress that enough. Every role, every company that you apply for is different. Even if they're, all software developer roles, for example, that you're applying for, they're still going to be slightly different. There are going to be nuances to them. Each company is going to be looking for slightly different things. So tailor your applications to that role within that company and what they're looking for in the job ad. Sometimes it's just a few minor changes, or just highlighting certain things and then kind of taking the spotlight off of other things and maybe omitting them. It's just going to put the focus on the right areas that employer or that company is looking for. So, can't stress it enough. Tailor as much as possible, that cover letter and the resume. Regurgitating your resume or the job description in the cover letter as well. Like, don't do that. We think back to what I was saying about cover letters earlier on. Don't just replicate or kind of a written, like a narrative of what's on your resume in your cover letter. Those facts are already there on your resume. Your cover letter is that point where you can really kind of put, the spin on yourself and paint a broader picture of who you are and what you bring to the table in relation to the role you're applying for. Don't have them repeat each other. And likewise, the same with the job description for the role you're applying for. Don't just kind of regurgitate, copy what they're saying in the job ad, in that job description. That's not the way to go about it. You should be highlighting and connecting the dots to a few things that you've noticed there, but also talking about what you bring to the table and why you're, what appeals to you about the company and the role. But as I say, pick out a couple of key points from that job advert, from that job description, and marry it up to who you are as an individual. The third thing there is being too wordy, sharing too many details. If it's too much, it's overwhelming. It's maybe a bit of a scattered approach. You're not kind of fine tuning and honing yourself down to, as once again, those 2 or 3 points that really, connect you to the role you're applying for. If there's just so much detail there and you're talking about, this, that, the other, and it jumps around, it's confusing. It's probably going to be a lot of words as well. So don't do that. Don't kind of overthink it and overanalyze and kind of overshare too much information, because you're not making it a really clear call for the recruiter or the hiring manager to understand why you're applying for this job. So keep that in mind. And then the biggest and final thing, the big faux pas, is incorrect contact details. And you would be surprised at the amount of time that people do that. Double check your phone number. Make sure that you've got your phone number on the resume and on your cover letter correct. Make sure that your email address is correct on both of those documents. Make sure that your link to your profile is correct. Make sure if it's a portfolio or a GitHub page profile, make sure that everything there is correct across both of them. It's not a good look, because especially if someone reviews your application and they want to try and get in touch with you and those contact details aren't right, you'll miss out on an opportunity to interview potentially. But yeah, really can't stress that enough. Make sure that you are correct with all those contact details, and email addresses as well. Having a professional email address. I know sometimes people have personal email addresses that maybe are humorous or a bit funny or a bit wacky. It's good to have a professional looking email address as well, just to kind of paint the right impression of you. But there's some really common mistakes, and I guess to add to that I've already mentioned earlier on is attention to detail with spelling, typos, grammar, formatting, all of that. Don't slip up with that either, because it reflects badly on your application. Especially if you're going to be writing, hired to be writing emails and presentations and be involved in projects, like anything like that. Attention to detail is so important. You might not think it, but it really does strike a chord with recruiters if there's multiple mistakes. It speaks volumes about the applicant. Don't slip up on any of these kind of common pitfalls that people make. Okie doke. That's the end. I've gone through a ton of content. I'm really aware of that, and I was very conscious of time, so apologies if I was going at quite a rapid pace, but it's all super important stuff. Hopefully some great takeaways there for all of you, some things that you'll be able to put into practice, keeping your the front of mind when you're writing those applications, those cover letters, those resumes, in terms of some simple frameworks, formulas to make it a lot easier and a lot more effective for your applications. Once again, just a reminder, follow us if you aren't already. Would love to hear what you've got to say about today's session. Stay in touch with us, and keep an eye on our website, keep an eye on our socials, and the next thing I think is, if we've got any questions, I will look at the chat here. I see one has come in from someone. Okay, good question. The first question I've got here, feel free anyone to drop any questions you have in the chat box. They say resume should be 1 or 2 pages. Works well for those who've spent a long time in the same company, or just a few. Do you have any tips for mid-career or senior professionals who've changed roles, companies every 2-3 years, or work as sole traders, contractors, or freelancers? Look, 1-page resume obviously is ideal, and 2 pages at the very most, especially if it's someone who has quite a lengthy career. What I would say is, your most kind of relevant roles are the most important, and your career history that goes back 5-10 years is what we're looking for the most. Anything kind of back in time, have it listed. It doesn't necessarily even need to have more than a bullet point, 2 bullet points at most, if any, if it's not relevant at all. If you've kind of been in similar types of roles, and working in the same profession and moved, I think as you said there, to companies in the same industry every couple of years, it also doesn't need to be tons of information there either. I think, as I say, the kind of the main body, or the kind of meat on the bone, should be with those more recent roles, and then what you did previously kind of before 10 years prior, doesn't need to go into as much detail at all, unless there's anything that's really relevant there to call out. That would be my suggestion for that. Of course, booking some time with me, feel free to hit me up, drop me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to kind of discuss any of these things with me in more detail directly. The next question, conscious of time, is it possible to share this recording? Yes, everyone that has been registered, we will be sharing the recording with you within the next couple of days. Once we've got it uploaded, that link will go to you, so you can watch this and pause and look at the slides and kind of work your way through it. So yes, that will be shared with you. Another question we've got here from Georgia, how do you communicate gaps in the resume then if you've gone back and forth between types of roles and there's a 2-year gap, for example, between the last 2 relevant roles you did for the job you're applying for? So let me just break this down. Gone back and forth between types of roles and there's a 2-year gap between the last 2 relevant roles. Well, if you've been in employment, list it. If it's so you've worked as, let's say, as a marketing specialist for 2 years, you then went and worked in hospitality, maybe, still have that role listed there. It's not a gap. It's not a gap in employment. If it's not relevant to what you're applying for, once again, you don't need tons of bullet points there, but demonstrate that continuation. If it's a true gap in employment, and you've maybe been off for 2 years because you've been starting a family, or we're traveling or anything like that, call it out. Put those dates there and say 2 years off traveling, 2 years off to start a family, whatever it might be. It doesn't need to take up loads of space, but call it out, just to explain what that gap is. I think, once again, you don't want people to fill in the blanks and kind of jump to their own conclusions. So just taking a line to say what you were doing in that career gap is fine. Next question. I'm currently working as a project manager in construction, and the reason this was necessary for me to get a permanent visa in Australia. Would you suggest being honest about this when I interview for UX designer roles, or best not to mention the visa reasoning? I don't think you need to mention the visa, but there's plenty of transferable relevant skills from working in project management to moving across into UX. They're not that you've moved from maybe working as a dentist into UX. So I don't think you need to call out that the reason you were doing project management work was to get a visa. It's a great career, it's a great role, and there's some relevant skills there. So you can just talk about that transition from project management to UX quite easily without having to mention the visa there. Okie doke. And the last question I've got time for. It's great that there's been so many questions as well. Thanks, everyone. Recently, I applied for a role via LinkedIn, and there was no email address or contact person, just the quick apply button. And then once through, no provision to upload a cover letter, in which case you're suggesting that we attach the cover letter to the back end of the resume. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. If you can only upload the one document, tap the cover letter onto the end of it. There's no harm in doing that. If you obviously quick apply and there's no contact person or email address, you're already on LinkedIn. Go onto the LinkedIn company page and have a look and see, do you know who maybe the person that's the hiring manager for the team might be? Do you know maybe who's the talent acquisition person that's looking after the role? Try and connect with them on LinkedIn, and then attach your cover letter there as well and say, hey, I've applied for this role using the quick apply. There was no option to attach a cover letter. Hope you don't mind. I'd love to attach it and send it through to you here as well. So yeah, that going the extra mile in those cases is a great idea, because it's really showing that you're keen and interested in the role. So yeah, would kind of thoroughly recommend doing that if it's just a quick apply as well. Okie doke. We've got 12:59. It's been so great to have so many of you attending, and I hope this has been super valuable for you. Keep an eye out in the coming days. The recording will be shared with you all, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And I will hopefully see you all soon. Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone.